You're listening to Relatable with Stephanie Michelle, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Relatable. I am your host, Stephanie Michelle, and today we're going to talk about a topic that hits pretty close to home for me. So close to home, I found myself getting a little nervous before the show, and I usually don't, but when it's something that is, something that I've experienced or something that involves my family or friends, it hits me differently. So we're going to be talking about addiction and sobriety. And, the first time that I was exposed to the concept of addiction, I was in high school. A person in my immediate family went to rehab for drug and alcohol abuse. Now, I come from a family that really struggles talking about any issues whatsoever, so I really struggled to understand what was going on, and I really wanted more details. I really wanted to understand what this person was going through. So I decided to check out as many drugs and drinks that I could possibly get my hands on, which was surprisingly quite a bit. So you parents out there that think that their kids can't get drugs and alcohol in high school or even younger, I've heard these days, you're sadly wrong. It's so easy to get. I really wanted to understand what could be so powerful over someone, so I just dove in. And some drugs I didn't like very much, but some I liked quite a bit. And I can understand the allure of these things and know that I have to stay away from them even to this day. There are addiction struggles in my family, both on my dad's side of the family and my mom's. And some scientists and doctors say that addiction is genetic. Yet, although it may run in your family, that does not mean necessarily that you will struggle with addiction. But because of this, I think I stay sensitive and aware to my own habits and behavior and patterns. The family member that I mentioned earlier moved away from illegal drugs to prescription drugs. And after years of ups and downs and lies and abusive behavior and incoherent rants, I had to tell this person that I love you, but I can't tolerate this behavior from you anymore. It was one of the toughest things that I've ever done and remains pretty difficult to this day. See, I told you emotion was going to come up. And at some point, I hope to be available for this person again. But right now, I think the best thing that I can do for myself and everyone around me is just to not be available. So who am I available for would be a better thing to focus on. And I will say that I find comfort and amazing friendships and people that are sober. There's something about a person that's sober that is able to be really vulnerable and accountable, and I dig that. I find that really refreshing. Anybody that says that sober people can't be fun, you're sadly mistaken. And if you're one of those people that asks somebody at a party, why aren't you drinking? Stop doing that. It's not really, a great thing to ask somebody. It's a question that I think we should retire. In addition to my personal connection to the topic, the other reason that I wanted to talk about addiction today is I think that there's many more types of addictions out there that people are struggling with. And instead of getting addressed, they get kind of romanticized in entertainment and through pop culture. So I'm hoping today, by talking to my guests that both have very different stories, that everybody watching will find something that they can relate to, use as a step to their own wellness, or be able to understand how best to support someone that might be struggling with addiction in their family or in their friends today. So first, later we're going to be joined via phone by Laura Frasier, and we'll hear her story. But first, we're going to meet Johnny Olsen, who's sitting in the studio with me. And let me tell you a little bit more about Johnny. Johnny's a fashion photographer with clients such as Bravo Network, The Sporting News, Playboy, Perfection Magazine, and Ultra Magazine for Men. He travels extensively through the U.S. as an instructor and presenter for photography workshops and training sessions. Over 20 years ago, Johnny started his own journey of sobriety. Johnny considers it an honor and a privilege to stay active and involved with various organizations in the drug and alcohol treatment industry. He stays extremely busy by serving on boards, speaking, and working as a liaison for law and prison programs. That's
Thank you.
Welcome.
Sounds a lot better on paper.
Does it? Well, so the first thing that I asked Johnny, and we have a big topic to talk about.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Yeah.
Slightly.
Slightly, right?
We're going to tackle it all here in an hour.
Yeah,
folks.
we're going to try.
We're going to solve it.
We're not going to solve it.
We're
We're going to put some good stuff out there. But since it is a pretty big topic, I'd like to give guests a chance to kind of just clear anything else that might be distracting you from talking about this. So is there anything that you want to share before we get into the questions today?
Not too much. First and foremost, I just want to let anybody watching or listening know that I'm not an expert on alcoholism or addiction. I don't have any fancy initials after my name. I'm simply here to tell my story and what happened to me, and and in the world of sobriety, generally speaking, we ask people to, find what you can relate to, and you can discard the rest, and just, well, I didn't do that. I didn't do, well, oh, I did, so, but yeah, I'm not any expert by any means. I'm no spokesperson for any, I'm just here to simply tell my story about, so.
Awesome. Well, then let's start there. What is your personal experience with addiction?
I was born at a very young age. Yeah, I'm the, I grew up in a good home. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. We call that Vatican Roulette, where I'm from. And I was born in New York and raised in North Jersey. And there was nothing really that much on the horizon for me. My dad drank quite a bit, and possibly problematic, and but was still able to show up and get to work every day the next day and stuff. And not the nicest guy in the world when he drank, but and the beauty of being on this side of it is, whereas before, where I was just full of anger and resentment, I now go, oh, that poor guy. He was doing the best that he could with what he had, and he didn't have much, so and it really has just opened my heart and tried to see and have some compassion for the other side. And so, but early on, I think there was, I do very little in moderation, and even from as a kid, and a lot of people that with, addiction and alcoholism, and they always sort of felt separate and a part of, and not, and sort of on the outside. And, that's many people's stories. And it was really, I just grew up like little shell-shocked, like just kind of like, really, I mean, my friends from high school that I'm friends with on Facebook, I graduated in '85, and that makes me 50, which I'm like, they just, I'm such a different person that I am today, because I was just scared of everything, and, and fear absolutely consuming, a lot of people would say that, they pass a polygraph that my decisions in life were based on hope and prosperity. I think most people operate on fear. Yeah. Whether they know it or not, and and just I was a late bloomer, and I didn't want to drink that much because I saw what it did, and I didn't want to repeat that, and so I found a drug route, and cocaine was my drug of choice, and the candle that burns twice as bright lasts half as long. And I'm grateful that I found hard drugs, because it took me down to my knees quicker and quickly, and in order for me to see that there was a problem. And that's one of the most baffling features of alcoholism and addiction, is how far one has to go before we go, oh, I think there might be a problem.
What was your moment in that?
I was working in a restaurant in Beverly Hills, and I was, friends with a lot of the people that were there, and management as well. And I knew the computer systems pretty well, and I knew every manager's password. They had the year that they graduated high school or the year they were born. No, it was
Their
not.
pet's name.
This was like 95. Now they have keys and swipe cards because guys like me came around and ruined it for everybody. And I used to go in and like delete things off of a check, like $40 off an item if they paid cash, and you just made an extra $40. And I was good at it for a while until I wasn't, and I got caught. Got fired by one of my best friends at the time, who was management, and looked at me in the eye, and I'm just like, just wasn't me. That was, and just the denial was just. And I remember sitting in my car in the parking lot in Beverly Hills, and it was still like, I came in for a dinner shift, and the first thoughts that came to my head were, wow, it's happening for you. Like, it's all crumbling. And so, I mean, if you're anything like I am, when it starts crumbling, now we really need to get high to numb the pain.
So your second thought was,
now I don't have a job to show up to, because that was getting in the way of my get high time.
I gotcha.
So, I mean, normal people think like that all the time.
What's normal?
Yeah, exactly. So, and that was really the first that first moment where I was like, because as many people's, my idea of, alcoholic or a drug addict was pushing a shopping cart, sleeping under the bridge, not the case. And it was just so painful. And everybody, I was the last one to know, everybody knew.
Were they saying things to you?
Yeah, they said a few things to me, but I was...
What got through to you? I mean,
nothing.
Nothing. Like, did it anger you? Did it push those people away?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it was... it angered me because it was true, and, it's... nothing, that's why when I have people that approach me that are say, what should I do with this person? What should I say to this person? I'm like, nothing. You're really not going to... these like interventions where you sit down and like, I'm sure that, those work sometimes.
Nobody likes unsolicited advice.
It's criticism.
One.
It's and it's so it's, and I'm not saying that interventions don't work. I'm just saying that like it's like cornering a trapped animal, at some point, and I don't think I would have responded well. I don't know. You know what? Here I am again, one more time, sharing what I think my experience would be, which I love to do. Let me tell you what it's like to jump out of an airplane in free fall. I've never done it, but let me tell you what it's, the rush and the airflow. There was really nothing. It was really it was really an inside job, and there was just this moment, this voice, and anybody that's ever really gotten sober for any considerable time, they call it their moment of clarity, where all of a sudden, all of the chaos, my impersonation of the Tasmanian devil bouncing off the walls and, at 100 miles an hour, it just all stopped and everything became really, really calm, and I was able to see very clearly of where I was at, and one of those moments of clarity was when I was living in a crack house in Desert Hot Springs, California, which is out by Palm Springs. It's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. Not judging, just reporting. And, with a house with no electricity, boarded up windows. And I remember it was the summer of 1996.
That shit smelled fantastic,
it was amazing. And it was the summer of 96, and it was, it hovered around 116 degrees that summer. And I remember seeing little kids with backpacks in August, and they were going back. And I just remember going...
They were coming to get drugs to go...
No. Little kids with backpacks going to school.
Okay, got it.
No, thank you. Yeah, no.
Wow.
Going to school, like waiting for the school bus. And I'm going, the whole world doesn't give it... Like, the world's going on without you. And they don't care.
Yeah.
Nobody cares, and what do you mean nobody cares? It's me. the level of just the level of selfishness with addiction and alcoholism is staggering, and so that's why one of the reasons that I'm sober and happy 20 years is that I do service work, and I go and speak to people that might be in a facility or in a and I go, and I think, I'm a month late on my car payment, and what's gonna, blah blah blah, and then I walk in there and I see the doll eyes looking back at me with nothing, and I just go, oh, my life's not so bad, and because I've got a real good forgetter, and so that moment of clarity was just seeing these kids going back to school and going, the whole world's going on around, like nobody cares, like wake up, you need to do something, and shortly thereafter I did,
And what was that? So what were those first steps that you had to take?
Well, it was really, really interesting because I was hanging out with some gang members that had been thrown out of South Central Los Angeles, which is a feat in and of itself. And I'm like, and the brothers took one look at me when they were like, "Who let this cop in? I mean, this guy's way too white." And the problem with hanging out with gang members is that there's always a rival gang. And I'm white boy from Jersey. My gang etiquette isn't really up to snuff. And so, these couple guys, about like 4 a.m, some cats showed up to the house. There's only one door to get in or out, and they poured gasoline around the house, and they lit the house on fire.
Wow.
And what the next step is going to be. Everyone's going to start shuffling out the door, right? When you're a kid with the dog doo-doo on the front steps and the paper bag and and so what the next thing is going to be, and I just heard like pop, 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 pop from the street, and I just remember going, wow, my first drive-by, and so the sheriff's department had all the fun that they could take. They raided 13 addresses simultaneously at the end of August of 1996, and this one drug dealer had this little dog, and they split. They just bolted and left the dog in the yard, kind of thing, and a lot of people left in a real hurry, and this dog started following me around. And I love dogs, but I'm a little busy right now. I'm homeless. I've got a 1987 Nissan Sentra with the head gasket, which is leaking, and something wrong with the carburetor. When it would get that hot, it would get a vacuum leak, and you would not be able to start the car. And so I only had about 6 minutes of drive time a day, which I planned as much as Schwarzkopf planned the first invasion of Kuwait. Thousands of hours went into every day. And this dog started following me around, and I couldn't lose this dog. And it was this little 31-pound Basset Terrier mix with the little Charlie Chaplin, the little dwarf limbs and big ears and little bat ears, and she had 6 toes on her back foot, and I named her Vampira, and she saved my life. And I wound up going to a place, a support group, and these people are like, "Oh, you're new, right?" And I'm like, "Hey, what gave it away?" My dog was in heat.
Wow.
Everybody, it was in Desert Hot Springs, it's a minimum. You have to have at least 4 dogs, all unaltered. 2 of which are running loose in the neighborhood at any given time. Bob Barker would have had a heart attack in Desert Hot Springs. Yeah, the spay and neuter program not really up to par, and we'd have like 6 male dogs following us around everywhere, and it was not pretty, and I was done, and it's this woman who knew all the people at the support group and could have been saying hi to all of her friends, and she came up to me and she's like, "Hey, there's a guy who runs a no-kill animal shelter in town. He'll give you a place to live in exchange for work. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in?" I'm like, "Hold on, let me check my calendar." I'm like, yeah, I'm good for the next 18. I'm nothing really booked for the next 18 months. Nobody's really taking my calls. And that was the start of my journey. So here was this dog that I didn't want, that I couldn't shake. And I was about 6 years sober, and I was asked to participate at a group out in Palm Springs, and I invited this woman Lorraine to come out, and I said to her, you get a lot of airtime, and when I talk to people in Los Angeles, I said, I have one question for you. If I didn't have that dog that day, would you have said anything to me? She's like, absolutely not.
Oh, I'm a dog lover too.
And so it's God spelled backwards, and so this dog really saved my life. I mean, I in turn saved her life, so it was a symbiotic relationship. And because I always think I know I'm omniscient, and it's a gift that many of us possess, and I just think I know everything, and I really know nothing, and the universe is constantly just letting me know that and that was the start of my journey. I moved back to Los Angeles, and that was the start. That was the start.
So I had one more question before
Sure.
I bring Lara on into the conversation, but you kind of already asked it. So the question that I wanted to ask was, what advice would you give someone that thinks that their friend or family member is struggling? And I liked your answer. I believe in your answer. I've been on the receiving end, even just this last week, of unsolicited advice. Nobody likes it.
No.
And I think, and then you said something earlier about just having compassion. Like in my situation I shared earlier, I think that's the only thing I can do. I can have compassion. I don't have to take what I don't think is right behavior or abusive behavior from somebody. And I think that's, where people start to turn away, and you experience that when no one would take your call. And maybe that's a sign for somebody. But I still have compassion. And I think that's like the best that we can do if we're on the other side of this. If we're not, if we're seeing someone struggle, just go, you know what, I'll be there when I can.
Call me when you're done.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all, and it's sort of, there's a sister support group that talks about detach with love.
Yeah.
Like, I love you, but
yeah.
I can't go through the ringer with, you know what I mean? Like, call me when you're done.
Yeah.
I'll help you then.
Absolutely. Well, let's see if we can get Lara into this conversation, because she's going to share her story, and it's different than yours. So I'm going to call her.
It is?
Yeah. Can you believe that?
Oh.
They're not all the same. Let's see if we can get her. Hello.
Hello.
You're there. Yay.
I'm here.
All right. Well, I haven't read your bio yet, so let me introduce you to the audience. And thanks for joining us. So this is Laura Frasier. After years of working in the entertainment industry, Lara became addicted to prescription pills. Lara left the entertainment industry to focus on healing and truth-telling. She is a fierce believer in the power of owning your own story, and a strong advocate for addiction recovery. Lara received her MBA in Marketing and Global Business from Pepperdine University, and currently Lara is the Director of Marketing for Spring Gardens Detox. Welcome to the show. Have you been listening?
I have. I've been watching y'all on Facebook, and I've been waiting for your call. Yeah. So I am here. Thank you so much for asking me to do this.
I'm happy that you're joining us. And you're in Florida, right? You're joining us.
I am. I'm in Florida. Yeah, I lived in Los Angeles for about 10 years, so.
So your experience.
I know. Yeah. Just listening to Johnny talk about his story and some of the cities that he mentioned, I know that place. I know that place.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's all right. Well, so you know what's coming, my dear. There's three questions that I asked Johnny, and I'm going to ask the same of you. So tell us about, tell us your personal experience with addiction.
Yeah, so my personal experience, it's similar to any addiction story, and then it's not similar at all. My experience is that I really didn't think that addiction would ever be a part of my life. I grew up in an upper middle class family that was full of love and joy. But the one thing that I noticed within the culture and society that I grew up in is that it was really focused on accomplishments and success. So for most of my life, what I was chasing was to be successful. In terms of high school or college, I was really focused on my education and getting good grades. I really wanted people to look up to me, and I craved validation. And an interesting thing about me is that my parents told me they loved me every single day, but what was more important for me to hear was them saying they were proud of me. So I had this identity that was tied up into a label of being, for example, a good daughter, a good friend, a high achiever, someone who's intelligent. And I craved validation, and I didn't really know who I was. The only way that I felt that I was someone was by getting good grades, and then in turn being able to go to graduate school, and then in turn getting a good title for my career. So everything was involved in titles. And I only now realize this looking back at my story. When I was going through this, I just thought, that I was taking the motions of life, and that addiction wasn't going to be part of my story. And what happened is, I drank a few times in high school, and then a couple times in college, but I really favored just studying, creative writing, and just doing really well in the program that I was in. And so it's interesting that I'm like, my story isn't that I started using drugs young or that I started drinking alcohol young. My story is that I typically said no to those things. And from the outside, I looked like I was a really, a good person, like a goody-goody in some ways. And so when I was 21 years old, I had graduated college early, and I was studying for my GMATs. I wanted to go to business school, pretty much because my sister was going to law. My sister was in law school, and so I was always in competition with my older sister. But I had a minor surgery, and I was prescribed opiates, prescription painkiller. And I took them as prescribed, but it was the first time in my life where I remember thinking, there is peace outside of myself. I felt like a sense of calm. I felt like I didn't have to perform so much. There was some stress that was relieved. And so I took that prescription, and I did end up taking some for non-medical reasons, meaning the pain was over and I still took it. It helped me sleep. It relieved some stress, but it didn't really come into play. Addiction didn't come into play until a couple years later. That's just kind of my moment where, for the first time in my life, I took something outside of myself that I wouldn't think I would. And so I moved to California to go to graduate school. I started, my friends would have painkillers, and I would take them on the weekends. And one summer I went to Mexico and found a drug called tramadol, which is a non-narcotic pain reliever. And I started taking that for a pill a day for about 30 days. And then I quit because I knew this was not something that I would normally be doing. And I went to a psychiatrist at that graduate school, and I told him, it was the first time that I was willing to be honest. I said, I think I'm addicted to these pills. What can you do to help me? And he prescribed me 3 more highly addictive drugs, Xanax for my anxiety, Ambien to sleep, and then an antidepressant for depression.
Wow.
So what he was doing was just treating the symptoms, right? It wasn't like he was looking at, why was I using these painkillers? It was like, you're anxious? Okay, here's this. You're depressed? Here's this. And I didn't end up abusing those drugs very, very much. I completed graduate school. I got my dream job at a cable network in Los Angeles after school. And then in 2009, I was involved in a car accident, and I got prescribed more painkillers than imaginable. And at that time, I was somewhat happy about it. But again, the symptoms were being treated as opposed to anything else. It was just the doctors giving me more painkillers for my pain. Now, my addiction didn't really come into play until about a year later. When I was got in that car accident, I was working in television production, and I ended up getting a job as a vice president of sales for an entertainment group. And at that time in my life, television production didn't feel like I was successful. But if I was going to be working in business and have this high-performing title, then that was a big deal for me. So I felt like I was going to be someone again. I was going to have this big title. And what happened, 2 days before I was supposed to start, the investors of the company pulled out, and I was called and told that I would no longer be able to come on board. And in that moment, because my identity was so tied up into my career and so tied up into being successful, I just fell to my knees, and I went over to my friend's apartment, and I told her, I don't know what to do. I want to die. I can't handle this. This is so painful. What can I do? And I was crying on the floor, and she told me to call the psychiatrist. So I called him, and he basically, he picked up the phone. I told him I was depressed. I told him I was suicidal, and he said he had the answer for me to drive up to Malibu the next day and pick it up at the pharmacy. And the drug that he prescribed me was Adderall. I don't have ADD, I don't have ADHD, and that's typically what Adderall is prescribed for. It's an amphetamine. I had taken it once in college, a very low dose, so I didn't really have experience with Adderall. But pretty much the moment I was prescribed Adderall is when my addiction really took off and blew into something that I never would have imagined my life turning into.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, I kind of want to say what happened next. Yeah.
Well, for the next 4 years, I was in and out of rehabs and sober living homes. My family was trying to help me maintain sobriety and get sober, but I kept going deeper and deeper, and I just could not maintain any sort of sobriety. I was homeless for a little bit. I lived in my car for a little bit. My father and mother would fly from Texas to California to start searching for me because they couldn't find me and they were worried about me. My dad at one point saw me weighing 80 pounds and I was in drug-induced psychosis. I was hallucinating from the amphetamines that I was using, and he called my mom and told her that to start preparing for my funeral. So although my addiction was only about 5 years, I really went down quickly.
Do you remember what the first thing that you did to kind of start moving towards sobriety? Like what were the first steps that you took that you knew that you were on that journey now?
My story's a little bit different. I know there's this concept of tough love. However, without my mom and my dad, being able to constantly remind me how much they loved me and being willing to answer my phone call and being willing to get me into treatment and pay for a lot of my treatments, which I have since paid back, without knowing that I was loved by my family, I really feel like I would not be where I am today, and I never would have maintained sobriety. They pushed me into treatment, and honestly, the last time that I went to treatment, there wasn't this moment of clarity that so many people talk about, and I think that Johnny mentioned. It was like I had no other option, so I went to treatment. But day by day, I started doing the next right thing. I received counseling around my addiction, and I had a different treatment experience than I had in the past. But I think what really happened is that I was able to finally understand, because my life from the outside prior to my addiction seemed so perfect, I didn't really understand trauma or why I would start using. But there's a concept of like big trauma and little trauma. And I really started examining my life and realizing that I was so tied into this identity. Mm-hmm. And I think being so tied into that identity is really what led me into addiction. And because during my addiction, I had no identity, I just sought other means to escape pain in completely the wrong way. And that only made it worse. So there wasn't one big moment. I think there were a lot of small moments and a lot of different tools that I utilized to be able to finally maintain my sobriety. And what I did, one thing I know I did, is I created a life that I didn't want to escape from. And I realized that pretty much the cure for the pain is in the pain. So I stopped trying to escape my pain and instead sat with it and learned healthy ways to deal with it. And I think I know that is one reason why I am where I am today, and I am a woman that I am completely proud to be, and I am very proud of my sobriety and the life that I have created. But I don't think that I would be where I am at, and I know I wouldn't be where I'm at if I wasn't shown compassion and love by others and had that reminder that, you know, there are still people who cared about me, and there were still people who were willing to help me.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, thank you. It does. I mean, even though you're saying like most people maybe get hard love during this time, there's a thread of compassion even in Johnny's story. You know that it feels like, and hearing both your stories, that has to be present for you to get on the other side. If it's not just compassion for yourself, I mean, a dog found compassion in Johnny. Like it came somewhere. So it's not all about hard love. But if you were on the other side of this, so Johnny, we went through this already with Johnny, and he answered this. But if you were on the other side of this, seeing somebody that was struggling like you were, what would you do? I mean, knowing that you need some compassion, I mean, what would you do, or what would you advise a person that's seeing that?
Yeah, and Stephanie, just listening to your story of how it has touched you and seeing your tears, it really, I'm very empathetic to that. I know how my own family must have felt and the hell that I put them through. And there were times when they took a big step back from me, and I lost a lot of relationships during my addiction that I've since been able to rebuild. And another thing that I say is that every person is different. So I don't ever want to say that there's one way that you should handle the person who is struggling with. I know a lot of people really do need tough love, and those people also, you need to take care of yourself. So if you're seeing someone who's struggling with addiction and it's killing you inside, you have to step away to take care of yourself. So I totally understand that, and I think that's very important. Yeah. And it depends again on the relationship and the individual person, but I would always say that, right, we need to put our own oxygen mask on before we can take care of anyone else. So
name into that, sister. Yeah, I say that a lot. I say that a lot.
So whatever it is, I mean, if you feel like your life is going downhill because of the relationship that you have with someone who's addicted, and it's interfering with all your other relationships that are important and those people aren't hurting you, then I would recommend, yes, taking a step back from that person, always saying, I love you and I'm here for you when you're ready to get help. I will be here when you're ready to get help. As long as that person, the addicted person, knows that there is someone who will answer their call when they're finally ready and willing and make that decision to get help, I think that's important for that person to know.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, really well said. Well,
I meant the same thing as she did.
Yeah, your kids are funny. Well, I want to bring you guys into conversation now. So my next question for both of you is, what keeps you both work and do work in the industry now and helping others. So what keeps you working on your sobriety is the first question, and then the second question would be what keeps you interested in helping others. And you guys can talk with each other, who has
Johnny?
Yeah, let's hear it from John.
First?
Yeah.
What was the first question?
So what keeps you working on your own sobriety? Why do you stay sober?
Because my life depends upon it.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
I mean, I do. I show up and do certain things, and I live a life based on certain spiritual values, not because I'm a nice guy, not because it's the right thing to do, not because it's altruist, because my life depends upon it. And it's really, it's a really selfish motive of, self-preservation, but the only way for me to keep it is to give it away. And people die left and right, and I see that. And at my group, we just lost a couple of people that were there regularly, and it's heartbreaking. But at the risk of sounding completely cold and detached, if nobody died, I don't know how seriously I would take this thing. And I tell everybody else that if I go out and drink and wrap my car around a telephone pole and kill myself today, great, I get to be an example of what not. Everybody's an example of what I want to be and what I don't want to be. So nothing goes to waste. So, but yeah, it's the motivation. And I've also found this spiritual awakening, and it's so magical, and it's limitless. And why would I not want to keep exploring and keep going deeper for my own personal, because the bar is really high for me to get my bell rung, so to speak, and so I have to keep doing more and more work towards that. And so that's my motivation, because I want to continue to always be growing as a spiritual person and learning more things and exploring new things, and so
that.
Yeah.
That. What about you, Laura?
I think I would say that today in my sobriety, just like what Johnny mentioned, it's so important for me to grow and evolve, and to become a better human day by day. But what I've really realized in my sobriety, my entire moral compass has changed, and my purpose has changed, and my beliefs have changed, and my heart has grown tenfold. And I can't believe just how sensitive and how much I care about other people today. And what used to be so important to me, for example, like the title of my job, how much money I was making, what other people thought of me, those things aren't so important. Yes, they creep up like they would in anyone's life, but I've changed what I care about. And I've realized, like, I am so much stronger because I have been able to put away drugs and alcohol and deal with life as it comes. When I go through anything that is difficult and I don't escape it and I use healthy tools to cope with it, I have become such a stronger woman by going through that. And I've created a life that's full of so much joy. It's just like why I would never want to go back to my life before, because I have recreated this life that I am so in love with. And no, it's not a perfect life, but it's a much better life than one I have ever lived, even prior to abusing drugs and alcohol. And also, I want to keep being this woman that I am today. And I want to keep growing into a better woman day by day. And also, you know, I found a spiritual connection that's very important to me as well. And so sobriety is so courageous and brave, and it's an empowering life choice that you make. And so I'm just really proud to be sober, and I am very out loud about it, and I talk about it to pretty much everyone, but I'm just proud of the life that I live today.
Yeah. I like that both of you. So you have she has an Instagram handle that's Silly Lara, which I think is so cute. It's like you're, even though this is tough and you've been through something really tough, you have a position of joy and some playfulness. And I've experienced with you too, Johnny. Like just some of the jokes that you've cracked before the show. Like, we're going to talk about something really serious.
Some dark humor here.
Yeah,
you have to laugh.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You know, you go to an emergency room and hear the doctors and nurses talk behind. I mean, it's dark. It's got to be.
Yeah.
You know, it's so.
No, I think that's. I think being able to experience life like that is the fullness that Laura is talking about, and I know that you've kind of talked about it too.
Well, and also too, I mean, and I also think what needs to be clarified a little bit is that I think both Lara and I are on a similar spiritual path, but there's plenty of people that stop drinking and think that that's sobriety and don't work on the underlying causes and conditions, what Lara was talking about, and really growing and doing there's footwork that needs to be done, you know, and it's like going into a hospital and not seeing a doctor. You know, Johnny, what they say is wrong with you? I don't know, I've been here a week. With any x-rays, blood work? No, man, but the food's subpar and I dig the ass out gown. But, you know, so I mean, I mean, I want it all, you know. I mean, I want to be able to, because I've always been sober and miserable, and because I've tried that, and I'm sure, I mean, many people, I'm sure Lara, you know, so, you know, we've needed to find this spirituality, which when I, you know, first heard these concepts, I was like, oh man, miss me with all, I don't want to hear any of that. However, if I really, that's just my being dishonest, because if I really want to be honest with myself, wasn't all that I was seeking with drugs and alcohol was a spiritual connection? Smoking weed at 15, listening to Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, you know, and then, oh my God, you know, and connecting with everybody just on not even speaking. Yeah. So I'm seeking this spiritual experience all the time. And then people tell me that, you know, mentors and stuff say you need to find this spiritual connection. And I'm like, I get scared. I'm like, no, I don't. I don't want, that's not what I want. You don't know me, you know, and it's, again, my fear just getting in the way of everything.
There is something really beautiful about experiencing that there's something bigger than you. Laura, you said it somehow too. Like when you get out of like it's just about me and the title and everything, and find that there's more around you. You know, I talk about grace a lot in the show. This like concept that like that someone you could say something to me, Johnny, and like I just needed to say it in the moment, and you didn't pull that from anything. Like you didn't know that was going to be meaningful, but it's like this well of like spiritual stuff around you that let that flow to you, and it's like a gift. And like when you are open to it, you experience life more fully. There is more joy in it. And I think people do drugs to kind of have that feeling that there's something bigger than them, and yet don't admit that that's what they're working towards.
Native Americans with mescaline, and
totally. Totally. Well, so I have one more question, then we're going to switch gears, but you're still going to be here with me, but we're going to get off this topic for a little bit. Is just, why do you both do work in this field too? Like, you both are helping others in it. So what keeps you doing that? You want to go first, Lara?
Yeah, I'll go first. So for me, you mentioned I'm currently the marketing director for Spring Gardens Detox. We're a holistic detox facility outside of Tampa, Florida. And the reason that I started working in this field, obviously, I have a personal experience with it, and I'm very connected to it. In my sobriety, I've tried doing jobs outside of the industry, but I never really felt like it was as meaningful when I'm working within addiction treatment. And I've worked in all different arenas of addiction treatment, not just in treatment facilities, but in digital recovery publications. However, because I write every day about my sobriety and I talk every day about my sobriety, it's important for me to carry that message of hope. But it's also important for me. I love marketing, and I love branding, and I love creative writing. And so what I do for my work is I get to integrate a lot of that. And by doing that, I also get to have one-on-one interaction with people who thought that there was no hope for them, and I get to see them create a life of purpose and of joy. And that's one of the most beautiful experiences that you can ever have. And when anyone works in a field that we work on, or I work in a service field, you can't really leave it after experiencing it, because there's nothing that will quite ever compare to that.
Makes sense. Johnny, what do you?
Ditto. Yeah, I mean, seeing the light come on in somebody else's eyes, it's unparalleled, and it's just trying to, try to be a beacon of light in a completely pitch black warehouse, and try to be some sort of attraction of you can have this too, because again, my fear comes in, my self-centered fear of, I look around and and I'm at a big thing where there's 1,000 people, and and I'm going, man, it's going to work for everybody in the room, except for me.
Mm-hmm.
And which is just a lie that I tell myself. And so we're all just here to just show you that it's possible for any, and we tell our stories to be like, wow, that was a really crazy story. That was amazing. That guy was tatted down in Folsom doing life, and now he's running Microsoft. Mm-hmm. So I mean, there's hope for everybody, and it's just a show and tell operation. And at some point, someone's going to tell your story,
mm-hmm.
and you're going to and you're going to get your bell rung and go, wow, maybe this thing is for me as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Wow. All right, so we're running close to the end of the show, and so I'm going to skip over asking funny questions, because how can I go there from here? It's a really meaningful topic, and I want people to spend some time with this. Maybe watch the show again, or reach out to either one of my guests, but just spend some time thinking about it, either in your own habits or connected to people that maybe you have to reconnect with, or have a compassionate conversation with. Who knows? So I'm going to go right to what I like to do on the show, a segment called Heart Swallow, and I would love for both you guys to participate. And what we do here is just, the show is about relating, and I love the idea of sharing deep compassion or feeling towards another human being, as a way to just show, hey, it's not that scary. We all feel this. We all have meaningful thoughts towards other human beings, and it's not that scary to share it, and so let's do that. And my point in always asking the guests to do this is that I feel like the more people experience people sharing something meaningful to another human being, that we just raise the level of empathy in the world, and that's something personally I'd like to see happen. So, are you guys both okay with sharing a tribute to somebody or sharing your Heartswell moment to somebody?
Sure.
Sure. Laura, you still there?
Yes. I'm here, and yes, I'm okay with that.
You want her?
She can
okay.
go first.
Okay, we're going to go ladies first on yours. If you're ready and have one to share, I'll look at the camera and pretend I'm you for you. so you don't get to do that, but I'll do that for you, and we'll have your words.
Well, since we talked about this, and I talked about my mom and dad, I want to give a Heartswell to my sister. Because I think I leave her love a lot out of my story, and I leave her support out when I talk about it. However, like just thinking about my entire family, I just want to thank her first for being someone that I can admire and look up to, and being the mother that she is. Also for going through the 4 or 5 years of addiction and I'm crying. But going through that addiction that she went through with me, and seeing my parents, how stressed out they were, and having to deal with that, and now having the relationship that we do, and seeing her be a mother and raise her 2 children, it's an absolute honor to have her, Erin, you as a sister, and I just really appreciate everything that you have done for me and you still do for me, and our relationship is so important and so critical, and I would never be the woman I am without having you as a role model to look up to.
Awesome. Erin, I hope you're listening. And
I'll make her listen later.
Yeah. All right. Johnny?
I'm going to give a Heartswell to my wife, Tara. My wife's dying. She's got something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a very rare genetic disorder that killed her dad at 44. She's 44, and we're just starting to see the specialist to be able to diagnose her. And she came up with this diagnosis by herself initially, and now we're getting confirmation, and all the doctors, what medical, Dr. Google, what do you know, and there's 6 different subsets of Ehlers-Danlos, and we had thought that she had one with hypermobile joints, and she's got no collagen in her body, and so all of her joints are disintegrating from the inside out, and she was sober for 6 years and needed to start taking more opiates than, and smoke medical marijuana, and, and I am Mr. Sobriety, right? And I'm like, there's no such thing as medical marijuana. That is a crutch. And I watched it save my wife's life, and that's not a loophole for anybody out there that's like, see, it's not at all, and I don't know what's good for anybody, and certainly not myself. And the one specialist says, we're pretty sure that you've got the vascular type, which is the only deadly one, and median age is 48. And my wife has already known that she's dying for quite some time. My wife's a medium psychic, clairvoyant, and an empath, all of which are equally creepy. And try lying to a clairvoyant, right? Yeah, that goes over really well. And she's she broke open my heart, man, and she broke open my and my wife's the most death positive person that I've ever met, and her dad's been dead for 26 years, and he's the running joke of the house. And she's like, dead people aren't dead. They're just different, Johnny. They're still here with us. Ask them for a sign. And, but she's like, Johnny, she's like, you've entered a journey of spirituality. She's like, some of the support groups that you go to, it's a kindergarten version of spirituality. She's like, don't get me wrong, it's as good as many people are going to get. She's like, don't you want to know more? Don't you want to know what we're here? Why are we here? What are we doing here? And we're here to love one another. We're here to help each other. We're here to elevate each other. We're here to learn new things, and we're here to clear wreckage. And she's just opened my heart and just my level of spirituality of what's the bigger picture? Mm-hmm. What is the bigger picture that's really going on here? And it's a really brutal journey. And one of my mentors said to me when she first got sick, he said, Johnny, you are not talking to Tara no more. You are talking to her fear representative. Tara's been long gone in this relationship. And as painful as that was to hear, I knew it was the truth, you know, and none of us are at our best when we're scared, you know, and so it's been a journey, you know, and it's a journey, you know, and she and other psychic people talk about contracts and like, we agreed to this. Mm-hmm. She said yes to this. This was, you know, I think people that suffer from alcoholism and addiction, and I think it's sort of, you know, like the scene in Hunger Games at the town square, and they're like, okay, you're going to go down on the water planet, you're going to have alcoholism and addiction again, and the last 500 lifetimes it's killed you in 480. This is a suicide mission. Mm-hmm. But if you can go down there, and we're going to give you the same caveat we did the last 500 times, there's this needle in a haystack called sobriety. It's probably not in the cards for you, this life. However, if you're able to achieve it, you will clear lifetimes of karma. Who's in? My hand went up. Lara's hand went up. Thousands of people's hands went up to volunteer for a suicide mission here that we've successfully navigated thus far. And so, yeah, I just thank her for being who she is.
I don't know where to go from there, honestly. You know, I guess I would want to close by saying if it, whenever I hear something like this and I feel it, and I always say I wish people could be in the studio with me when I feel what somebody's saying and how real it is and how vulnerable they are in sharing it. But the idea of like how much we're affected by each other and like how our journey is not our own journey and how you can't take for granted the spiritual side of things just keeps coming up for me and something like that. And you know, I wish you guys the best and thank you for sharing and thank you both for being here and just being as real and vulnerable as you possibly could be on this topic. Laura, are you still there with me?
I'm still here. I'm just taking in all Johnny's words and thanking him for sharing that and saying I'm so sorry that you're having to go through that.
It's part, you know, and I met a guy who just met me, and he sounded a little bit cold, and he said, right when I told him what was going on, and he said, it sounds like you're about to have an experience that's going to be able to help another man.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what, you know, and Lara, you were amazing, and you spoke, I'm so happy that you were on because she spoke so far eloquently than I about everything.
I think you guys were a good balance.
Yeah.
I think this is the story, you know, I think that you offered something that that anybody could relate to.
Yes.
You know, that's what this was all about. So I thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I will be sharing your websites and how you can get a hold of both guests via social media or through their work after the show and in the show archives. But really appreciate you both being here. And next week we're going to pick up back on the series. The last in the series is Your Body is a Communication Ally. And we're going to emphasize what we haven't emphasized before, which is, you know, if you have chronic pain in your body and you don't want to be this like fully present because there is pain there, you know, what do you deal with that? You know, what do you do with that? So that's what we're going to be talking about. And as always, I'm just going to say, you know, I'm going to close the show with just relate with each other with more curiosity. And I'm going to add compassion and joy today as a reflection of the show that we just did. So I thank you both.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie. Lara, you're amazing.
You are too, Johnny. Thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. All right, that's it. We'll see you next Tuesday.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Relatable with Stephanie Michelle, only on LA Talk Radio.